200 guests watched my daughter walk down the aisle, her voice bright as she introduced another woman as her only parent. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I just paid $400,000 for the wedding you're about to hear about. Picture this, a ballroom lined with crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and every second of that fairy tale was funded by the woman sitting alone at table 9 they were pretending didn't exist. Emma Rose Carter, 26 years old, Yale graduate, and apparently too sophisticated to admit her mother owns a home services company. I built Carter Property and Maintenance from one rusty van and a handful of loyal clients into a multi-million-dollar business that services half of Connecticut's mansions, including the one her in-laws live in. I scrubbed grout while she learned ballet, fixed boilers to pay for her private school, and spent 3 decades teaching her that integrity was worth more than appearances. But tonight, watching her glide through the Ashford Grand Ballroom, she looked like she'd traded integrity for a new last name. "You must be staff," one of the groom's relatives said when I arrived. "Close. I'm the one who bought the flowers, the catering, the imported linens. Table 23, my assigned seat, was tucked behind a column beside the kitchen door, perfect for someone you don't want photographed." I smiled, took my seat, and opened my clutch to check the pending transfer. $400,000 due at 8 p.m., the final payment that would keep this entire fantasy running. One click from my banking app could decide whether the champagne kept flowing or the lights went dark. Emma caught my eye from across the room and quickly looked away. I could have forgiven the distance, even the new manners, but denial? That's harder to swallow when you're paying the bill. Her husband, Andrew Winthrop III, came from a family whose names are etched into hospital wings and golf club plaques. The Winthrops like their wealth inherited, not earned. I could feel it in the way they scanned me up and down. Polite smiles, careful tones, the social equivalent of bleach. When Andrew's father gave his toast, he thanked the Winthrops and our dear friends who made this evening possible. The crowd applauded. I sipped my water. They had no idea the woman sitting behind the pillar was the reason their caviar wasn't being served on paper plates. Years of business taught me when to stay quiet and when to let silence become strategy. Tonight wasn't about confrontation. It was about control, and control, like credit, only matters when someone forgets who holds it. I waited, watching the planner whisper to staff, watching Emma pose beside a man she called Dad. My stomach tightened, not from anger, but clarity. If she wanted to build a life pretending I didn't exist, fine. But she'd learned that pretending doesn't pay invoices. As laughter rippled through the room, I canceled the scheduled payment with one tap. The screen flashed red. Transfer canceled. Somewhere behind the music, I heard the quiet click of a machine resetting its balance. The party roared on, unaware that its clock had just started counting down. I slipped my phone back into my bag, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. In exactly 90 minutes, when the band expected their deposit and the catering team checked for clearance, the music would stop. I'd built my empire fixing broken things, but tonight, I wasn't fixing anything. I was letting it break.
At first, nothing changed. The band kept playing, guests kept laughing, and Emma's new world spun on as if grace itself were endless. But timing is everything in both construction and revenge. By 7:30, I saw the first flicker of unease near the service doors. 2 caterers whispering, one holding a tablet, the other glancing toward the manager. The hum of confidence in the ballroom thinned, replaced by the kind of silence that hides beneath expensive music. My phone buzzed. Payment authorization pending. I slid it face down beside my untouched glass. The room smelled of roses, caviar, and panic disguised as perfume. From my corner, I watched Emma pose for another photo beside Andrew's mother, both of them radiant beneath chandeliers that might as well have been spotlights on their denial. My pulse slowed. Control has a rhythm, and I'd learned to move to it years ago when I was juggling payroll, clients, and a broken water main at 2 a.m. A man approached. Harrison Wayne, event manager, crisp tuxedo, smile rehearsed. "Mrs. Carter, could I confirm a small detail about the billing?" His voice was low, but curiosity rippled through the tables nearest us. "Of course," I said, matching his tone. "Just need to verify the final transfer," he murmured. "Some delay on our end." "Delay, not denial, not yet. I'll look into it," I replied. He thanked me and vanished toward the kitchen, already speaking into his headset. Across the floor, Andrew's father gestured for another bottle of Dom Perignon, oblivious to the tremor running beneath his empire of linen and crystal. I caught Emma's eyes again, blue and bright and frightened this time. She'd heard the whispers. The planner leaned into her, all saccharine calm and frantic hands. I almost pitied her. She'd built this night like a palace of glass, not realizing who held the hammer. 7:50. The quartet shifted into a softer waltz, a signal for dinner service. Waiters rolled stove-covered trays into place, but then stalled, hesitating for invisible instructions. The lights seemed to shade dimmer. A few guests turned toward the staff area, sensing something off. I felt the shift like pressure before a storm. When the head chef himself appeared, flushed, sweating, phone pressed to his ear, I knew the system had started collapsing. No funds, no confirmation, no service. Simple math. I rolled from my chair, smoothing my dress, every movement deliberate. Power, real power, doesn't shout. It walks quietly through chaos and watches people make room. As I crossed the ballroom, conversations faltered. Someone whispered whispered my name, finally remembering who I was. At the edge of the stage, the planner met me, pale as icing. "Mrs. Carter, I'm sure it's just a technical." "I'm sure it is," I said, smiling the way you smile before a verdict. Over her shoulder, I saw Emma clutching Andrew's hand, his jaw tight with the realization that his family's reputation was now tethered to a canceled payment. In construction, you can tell when a beam's about to fail, the air goes quiet, the sound shifts from solid to hollow. That's what the ballroom felt like. Hollow, waiting for collapse. I stopped beside the nearest floral display, adjusted one rose that had begun to wilt, and whispered, "Now you'll understand the cost of pretending." The lights flickered once, barely noticeable to most, but enough for me to know the countdown had begun. The chandeliers blinked once, twice, and steadied again. To anyone else, it looked like a hiccup in the power line. To me, it was the sound of an empire cracking. Waiters hovered with silver trays that no longer felt safe to deliver. Harrison Lane's radio hissed with clipped voices. Authorization failed. Check account again. I drifted toward the edge of the dance floor as though pulled by the music, catching fragments of confusion blooming behind the scenes. A woman in a sequin gown laughed too loudly. Someone whispered, "Is there a problem with the vendor?" Problems. Always the word people use when they mean blame. Andrew's father, all cufflinks and inherited calm, beckoned a manager. I saw his expression tighten as the explanation reached him. No final payment, no release for the main course, no continuation of service. The gossip spread faster than perfume. Within minutes, the band had paused mid-set, pretending to tune instruments while glancing toward the coordinator for direction. I could have stepped in, could have fixed it. Money solves everything when you let it. But Emma needed to learn that love and loyalty can't be charged to someone else's account. She found me near the bar, panic hiding beneath perfect posture. "Mom," she hissed, the words sounding foreign on her tongue, "they're saying the transfer failed." I met her eyes, calm as marble. "Then call whoever's in charge of this fairy tale. I'm just a guest, remember?" Her lips parted, searching for a line that wouldn't burn. Before she could answer, Andrew arrived red-faced. "Mrs. Carter, the staffer's threatening to stop serving. My father—" "Your father," I interrupted gently, "can discuss finances with mine when he meets him. Shouldn't take long, since, apparently, I'm dead." His jaw clenched. Around us, the music died completely. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was alive, pulsing with realization. Guests turned in unison, phones half raised, instinctively recording drama wrapped in luxury. The planner's headset crackled. "Lights dim in 10. Power hold, wait. No confirmation." Then darkness swallowed half the ballroom. Gasps scattered like shattered glass. Candles flickered to life, then halos of flame around faces that suddenly looked ordinary without the chandelier's forgiveness. I stepped forward, the faint glow painting my sequined sleeves in amber. "Since everyone seems confused," I said, my voice carrying easily over the hush, "allow me to clarify. Every inch of this evening, from the orchids on the ceiling to the ice swans outside, was funded by Carter Home Services. That's me." Murmurs surged. Emma whispered, "Mom, please, not here. Here is perfect. Here's where you pretended I didn't exist." The chef appeared from the shadows holding a clipboard, desperate. "Ma'am, do we proceed?" I looked at my daughter, then at the man who'd taken my place in her photographs. "You heard the lady of the house," I said softly, "but she'll have to settle the remaining balance herself." Andrew's father stepped forward, blustering about contracts and decency. I handed him my phone, screen glowing with the app that showed transfer canceled, client authorization required. "Decency?" I asked. "You toasted a mother you never met." The lights surged briefly as the generators kicked in, revealing faces twisted between sympathy and thrill. Emma reached for me, tears already threatening the mascara she'd paid professionals to apply. "Why?" she whispered. "Because lessons cost something, and 400,000 seems fair for the truth." The room stayed still, caught between applause and outrage. Somewhere outside, a generator whined down, leaving only candlelight and the faint echo of consequences. When the chandelier's family went dark for good, the ballroom turned into a museum of shock. Guests clutched their phones like torches, their reflections trembling in the black windows that looked out over a lawn glittering with half-dead fairy lights. I walked through the chaos with the slow confidence of a woman who had spent her life holding ladders steady while storms tore at the roof. "Someone fix the power," Andrew barked, his voice cracking under the weight of old money meeting real work. "You'll need a licensed contractor," I said. "Carter Home Services is available. At full price." Laughter rippled from somewhere near the bar, the uncomfortable kind that hides behind awe. The planner chased me with apologies, the manager begged for authorization, the band quietly packed their instruments. I paused by the head table, looking down at Emma, makeup streaked, gown wrinkled, the princess costume collapsing under gravity. "You wanted to forget where you came from," I said. "Now everyone remembers." She whispered, "You ruined everything." "No," I told her, "I just sent the invoice." Behind me, security lights flickered on as emergency systems switched to backup. The contrast was cruel, cheap fluorescence bleaching out every ounce of glamour. The Winthrops huddled in their corner, arguing in sharp, clipped tones about liability and reputation. Their guests fled like they were escaping a sinking ship. One of them stopped to shake my hand, murmuring, "Good for you." I didn't need approval, but it tasted better than champagne. When the last violin case snapped shut, I reached the exit. Harrison Lane intercepted me with a final form, termination of service acknowledgement. I signed it with a smile. The venue's paid for the hours already served, he said carefully. The rest will remain unpaid, I finished. Outside, the night air smelled of wet roses and burnt electricity. I lit a cigarette I hadn't touched in years, the flame a tiny celebration. Inside, the generators died completely. Darkness swallowed the castle I'd bought and dismantled in a single evening. By dawn, Fairfield news feeds were already spinning the story. Bride's mother cancels $400K wedding bill mid-reception. The photos were glorious. Emma's shocked face, Andrew's fury, me walking away beneath the emergency lights. Reporters camped outside my office for 2 days, new clients doubled by Friday. I didn't give interviews. Power, after all, speaks loudest in silence. A week later, a thick envelope arrived, an itemized bill from the venue, a polite request for resolution. I framed it above my desk with a note written in red ink, paid in full in lessons. People think revenge is fire, but it's really architecture. You measure, you plan, you remove a single beam, and you watch the structure collapse exactly when you decide. Emma learned that night that erasing someone doesn't make them disappear, it just delays the demolition.